Hello, and welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today we're going to do something just a little bit different, and we'll get into that in just a moment here. Before that, as always, if you would like to follow me on Patreon, you can do so by going to patreon.com/NikkiTheDeathDoula. I just want to make sure everybody is clear that all the money I make from my Patreon goes to a fund so that I can provide pro bono work to those who cannot afford my services. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support that. I also would invite any and all of you to sign up for my newsletter. If you would like, you can go to my website, NikkiTheDeathDoula.com, and you might get a little pop-up that says get my newsletter. If you scroll down a little bit on the first page, you can sign up there. Just twice a month, I send out some nice little thoughts and information on upcoming events and speaking engagements and all the good things going on in my world. So if you'd like to stay up to date and just get some nice, lovely thoughts in your inbox twice a month, feel free to sign up. You can do that again at NikkiTheDeathDoula.com. But that's not why you're here right now. So let's just get into it, shall we? Today, I wanted to read a poem for you and kind of talk through it a little bit. This is one of those days where I couldn't really come up with a broader topic idea for a podcast episode. And I have a list of poems I usually pull from if I ever feel stuck, or poems I share with clients or other people who are grieving who I think might give them some comfort. But this is one I have looked at several times, and it strikes some thoughts with me. So I'm going to read the poem to you and then kind of just give my thoughts on it a little bit. So the poem is When Tomorrow Starts Without Me by David Romano. When tomorrow starts without me, and I am not here to see, if the sun should rise and find your eyes are filled with tears for me. I wish so much you wouldn't cry the way you did today, while thinking of the many things we didn't get to say. I know how much you love me, as much as I love you, and each time you think of me, I know you'll miss me too. But when tomorrow starts without me, please try to understand that an angel came and called my name and took me by the hand, and said my place was ready in heaven far above, and that I'd have to leave behind all those I dearly love. But when I walked through heaven's gate, I felt so much at home, when God looked down and smiled at me from his great golden throne. He said, "This is eternity, and all I promised you. Today your life on earth is past, but here it starts anew. I promise no tomorrow, for today will always last, and since each day's the same way, there will be no longing for the past. So when tomorrow starts without me, don't think we're far apart, for every time you think of me, I'm right here in your heart." Okay. If you feel like pausing for a moment to kind of let that sink in, or rewind it and listen to it again, that's a perfectly valid thing to do. But I have some thoughts about this poem, and they're not bad. I'm not gonna poo-poo this or anything. But my first reaction to this is a beautiful poem. It's well written. It's lovely. It has such a beautiful thought and feeling and emotion with it, and I enjoy it. I think it's lovely. There's one but with this. There's one thought I have when I read this, and it talks about, in the beginning, how I wish you wouldn't cry when you think about me now that I am gone. And these are things that I hear a lot when people are grieving the loss of someone significant. The sentiment of don't cry, they wouldn't want you to be sad, or don't cry, they're still here with you, don't be sad. And the thought of, and with that, when somebody who is still living says, I don't want people to cry at my funeral, and I don't want people to be sad when I'm gone. I want them to celebrate that I lived. And I love and adhere to that mentality myself. I want to live in a way that people will be joyful of the life that I led. and appreciate my presence within their life. But with that, though, is going to be the sadness. They're going to cry. And I don't necessarily think that's being narcissistic to think that you hope people will be sad when you die. But I would hope that anybody would strive to live a life that there will be people who will be sad when they're gone. And there will be people left behind who will mourn the loss of them in their everyday life, while in tandem celebrating the beautiful relationship they had while they were still with them. So I guess what I'm trying to say, and even what I believe this poem might be trying to say, is you're sad, but you don't have to be, because I am at peace. And to kind of, I don't want to pick that apart, but to just kind of explore that a little bit. The thought of you don't need to be sad because your person is at peace. So there's a lot to be said about that too, right? First of all, again, you're still allowed to be sad. You're perfectly allowed to be sad that somebody is no longer physically in your life anymore. You don't have to necessarily celebrate that they are at peace. It's something you can hold in your heart and know that they are at peace. But again, there's this push of celebrating the fact that they are no longer on this earthly realm. And I'm not going to say it's right or wrong to have that feeling, to have that sentiment, or to believe that. I think that's a perfectly beautiful response. And I always bring things back to the loss of my brother. You know, I know he had a lot of health issues in his life, and he was very sick for a long period of time. And to know that he is no longer suffering with those particular maladies, I hold that dear in my heart. I miss him greatly. I wish he was here, but I appreciate that he is no longer suffering. I also would like to just appreciate him being alive and healthy, right? That would be ideal. He would still be here and not be suffering those maladies. But all that to say is, if you have lost somebody close to you, especially somebody who might have been suffering, and you want to celebrate that they are no longer suffering, that is beautiful and valid. If you lost somebody who was perfectly young and healthy and were not suffering and died maybe suddenly or tragically, if you don't want to feel that, if you don't want to believe that, or you don't want to have the sentiment of, I'm just grateful they're at peace, because maybe they were at peace here with you, that's okay too. And if somebody comes at you and does the whole just be happy they're at peace, I mean, I'm not going to say tell them off, but you don't just let it go, say thank you and move on, because it came from a place of heart. But you don't have to adhere to that. You don't have to take their words and think, well, I guess I'm effing this up because I don't believe that. If there is one thing I have had to explain to every client I have had, either it's a grief coach or a doula or even just friends around me, is I promise you, you are not screwing up grieving. You're not. You are not screwing it up. You are doing it exactly how you need and are supposed to do it. So however you are grieving, whether or not you celebrate that they are at peace, whether or not you cry for them or laugh for them or have joy for them, whatever your response is your response, and it's okay. You don't have to think or believe anything anybody else tells you. And that holds true for just about anything in life. If you believe and love something, then that is yours. And you don't need to have your mind changed. Okay? That's the poopy thing with grief in our society, and the fact that we don't talk about it, is that we all have these ideas in our heads of either how we have felt or dealt with something, or what we have seen around us, and that's how it's just supposed to be. And that's not necessarily accurate for the next person. So remember that. When somebody's grieving, their experience with their loss is going to be completely different than yours. And they're going to have very different reactions. And if you are the one grieving and you're responding in a way that's different than people around you, You're not getting it wrong. It's perfectly okay. Okay, you have my blanket permission to grieve in the way that you need, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. I always have to put that caveat in there. What we do with our grief is almost as important as how we do it, right? We want to grieve in the way that's best for us without hurting other people. Okay? All right. That's all. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed this poem. I know it's a shorter episode, but I just wanted to share something beautiful with you. All right. Thank you so much again. You know where to find me, NikkiTheDeathDoula.com. If you want to follow me on Patreon, you can do that there. Please know that all the funds that I receive from Patreon go to a fund so that I can provide free support to anyone who needs my services. I've recently started posting on my Patreon to my patrons an update every month as far as what their funds are going towards, so they know for sure that I really am using this money to help people who need it. So if you'd like to be a patron, you will know exactly what your money's going to once a month. You get access to this podcast a week early. You get grief affirmations in your inbox and all sorts of other great content. There's also content for free on there too, so you're welcome to follow me without giving me a dime, and you can still get some great stuff over there. Okay, anything else you want to find me in, there's a link in the bio with a link tree to all my things. That's all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, as always, your grief is yours, your feelings are valid, and grief doesn't always have to suck. Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula is produced by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC in Columbus, Ohio. Nikki the Death Doula LLC is for consulting, education, emotional support, and guidance, and is no way considered a funeral establishment or licensed mental health establishment. Scripts, editing, sound design, literally everything with this podcast is done solely by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC, with the exception of the music. The music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. Licensing information can be found at filmmusic.io.